Today is May 24th, 2018. My name is Holly Cohn, and I'm here with David Epstein to discuss his background in growing up in Dallas. So David, if you could tell me a little bit about where you were born and about your family background in connection to Dallas.
Okay, I was born in a section of Baylor Medical Center that was called Florence Nightingale Maternity Hospital back in 1957, which is where my brother was born and my sister was born. But it was not called actually Baylor at that time, it was Florence Nightingale, which is, I guess, really old. We were living in East Dallas at that time. When I term East Dallas, most people think of East Dallas as being White Rock. I was further south and further east. From where we lived, you could walk 2 blocks and be in Mesquite. So, I mean, when I say east, that's about as far east as you can go. Might be called Casa View by some people. If you're familiar with any of the streets out there, Oates and Ferguson, Oates Drive and Ferguson Road, which is kind of funny because Ferguson Road south of Oates went down to Highway 30, and that was what we used to call when we were kids as Church Row, because every single church was represented between Ferguson and 30. Of course, there was no synagogues. The closest synagogue, I think, would have been Temple Emmanuel at that time. And at that time, from where we lived, that was a good 45-minute drive because most of the roads were 2-lane. Major Northwest Highway was like a 2-lane road, and it took forever to travel down it. So that's where I grew up.
Okay.
I think I was there until, we were there until I was in the 10th grade, and then we moved to Richardson.
Okay.
Big move.
Okay. Uh-huh.
So, and there still weren't any temples close by.
Sure.
So, I mean, like I said, we didn't really grow up in the Jewish community. Sometime when we were, me and my brother were, I don't know, he's 2 years older than me. We must have been in about 7th and 8th grade. And my dad came home one day and said, "You're joining the Boy Scouts at Temple Emmanuel. Good luck."
Oh.
So once a week, we drove all the way 45 minutes to go to Temple Emmanuel to attend Boy Scout meetings and play with all these Jewish kids and then go home and never see them again. So that was pretty much, my Jewish life.
Uh-huh.
Everything else was, either Baptist, Christian, or some Catholic something or other. I mean, we didn't have, I think I told you on the phone, we had maybe 4 Jewish families in the neighborhood, and one was us, and my grandparents lived 2 blocks away.
Okay.
So that took up half.
Did they settle in that area? Is that why you
No.
lived there?
Actually, my grandparents used to live in South Dallas. I don't remember the name of the street, but that's where my dad was raised, back when South Dallas was the Jewish neighborhood, down off of Forest Avenue, down in that neighborhood, Fair Park. That was, the Jewish neighborhood.
Sure.
In fact, it was kind of funny, a little segue, when my mother died, we were burying her at the cemetery on Dolphin Road.
Uh-huh.
And some friends of mine came to pay their respects. And on the drive over, he pulled me aside and he goes, why did y'all put your cemetery in this black neighborhood? And I had to explain to him that it was not a black neighborhood 100 years ago. So, but we all got a chuckle out of that.
Uh-huh. Right.
So, but my parents bought a house in East Dallas, and when my grandparents decided they no longer wanted to live where they were living, they bought a house a couple blocks away.
Okay.
So that's how we ended up in that neighborhood.
Okay. And how did your family originally come to Dallas?
Well, let's see. My mother came down here for a visit, to visit some cousins, and decided she liked the freedom and the wide open spaces of Dallas as opposed to New York, and decided not to go home. My dad was born here. His dad came over from, I believe the paperwork that I read said that he listed his home as in, I want to say it's Lodz or Lodz, Poland.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But that's not where, he caught a boat. I don't remember where he caught the boat. Landed in Ellis Island.
Okay.
And I want to say it was like 1907. And at that time, I actually have a piece of paper that I found, I don't know how I did it, showing his name and everything on the docket for the boat. Listed him as 18 years old at the time.
Oh, okay.
But reality is he was only 13. Came here alone with no money, no job, I don't even know if he knew where his family was. He landed went from New York to Chicago, and then from Chicago we went to someplace in Oklahoma. I don't remember the town, but when his father died, who had been here,
Okay.
that's what brought him to Dallas, is when his father died. I think either his father owned or ran a company called Lone Star Steel. It was like a junkyard.
Okay.
So, and my grandfather took that over and ran that for however long it existed. So, we've been here a while.
Okay. Is that what your father did also?
No, my father was a jeweler. He was in the jewelry business. He owned his own store for a while, and then the government came knocking and said, we think you need to go to war. So he had to close his store, and he went to the Army, and that was the only time he really left Texas, is when the Army said, go here, go there. And then they put him in a plane and shoved him out over Korea. So, but when he got out, he came right back to Dallas.
Okay.
And he was in jewelry for his all of his adult life. He sold, he worked for Gordon's, he worked for Zales, he worked for a company called Ace Jewelers, which later morphed into a company called Adelstein's. I don't know whether anybody's familiar with that, but they were a local big company. I think Irving Adelstein is still operating jewelry business somewhere, but I won't swear to that.
Okay.
But he retired from the jewelry business.
Okay. And is he still living?
Yes, he is. He's about to turn 90.
Oh, okay, very nice.
Yeah, his birthday's in June.
Okay.
So that's why I said you should really talk to him. He has.
Okay.
He can tell you about when Temple Emmanuel used to be on the south side of, I think it's called Founders Park,
Uh-huh.
down in South Dallas.
Okay.
He told me that the reason they moved is because the building was sinking.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So they had to sell it and move, and he told me about being a little kid and going to Sunday or Saturday school, Sunday school, going to classes, and the kids were either downstairs and the men were upstairs, or vice versa. I don't remember how it went, but
Uh-huh.
there was separation.
So he was involved in the congregation until you moved further away from...
He was involved until probably his late teens, I would say, maybe a little
Okay.
bit later.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether this is true or not, but I have a feeling he was supposed to be a rabbi. We have a family tree hanging on the wall that's 3 feet by 2 feet,
Uh-huh.
maybe bigger. And the only word that I can get anybody to translate on it is the word rabbi.
Oh,
And there's at least 30 of them on there in the family background. The family tree is so old that, I mean, my grandfather had, I think, 9 brothers and sisters,
uh-huh.
of which I've not met any of them,
Okay.
and none of them are on the family tree. So, you know, and it starts with, somebody read a rabbi's name on it who wrote some kind of book that everybody uses for teaching in Hebrew school, and apparently they're still using that book.
Oh, okay.
So, then they told me that at the very top, you know, where you'd have a normal family tree and you'd have the mother and the father,
Mhm.
and it would come down, and it's actually 2 brothers. And it's the 2 sides of the family from the brothers. And somebody said that they were like the Supreme Court of rabbis. I don't know what this means.
Oh,
Because I can't get anybody to translate family tree.
oh, okay.
So, I mean, I've tried and nobody seems to, apparently the guy that wrote this thing wrote and spoke like 3 different languages, and he kind of jammed words together.
Oh,
So,
okay.
I'm not
Okay.
positive, but,
Uh-huh.
I mean, I've had several rabbis look at it, and I've had several scholars look at it, and like I said, the only word that everybody has easily picked out is rabbi. And like I said, it's on there about 30 times,
Uh-huh.
at least. So,
So did you used to do things at home if you weren't part of a congregation?
you know, the neighborhood that we grew up in, not really. I mean, you know, we would have like Seder dinners, you know, on the holidays. We never decorated the house. Growing up in the, you know, late 50s and early 60s in East Dallas, you didn't advertise you were anything other than a wasp. You know, you blended. You know, I mean, it sounds really bad to say this. You know, the KKK was still relevant.
Mm-hmm.
And as anybody probably knows, that when they get finished with the blacks, you know, the Jews are next. And so we didn't advertise. We were just poor white people that never decorated for Christmas and didn't go to church, and, you know, nobody knew.
Did anyone know at school, or also you just kind of blended?
Well, we blended for quite a while until, I'm going to say my brother was in the 7th grade, which would have put all 3 of us in the same school. And something came up, and all of a sudden they knew that we were Jewish, and they wanted us on the Jewish holidays to come down to the office and over the PA system explain to people what this holiday was and what it was all about. And, you know, again, trying to blend, you really didn't want to do that. You know, you didn't want to be different.
Right. So what did you tell them when they asked you to do that?
No, thank you.
Okay.
You really, I mean, you did not want to stick out over there.
And today, are you involved in any kind of activity in the Jewish community?
Not really. We were going to join a synagogue back when our kids were small, but my daughter seemed to think that the only reason to have a bat mitzvah was to get all the presents and have the big party, not the religious part of it. And we kept telling her that if she wasn't going to be into the religious part, we weren't going to go through with it, and so we never joined. And then my son was coming of age, and we were going to join for him because he was really into it, but he passed away.
Oh, okay.
So we never did, and, you know, it's I mean, we do the Passover dinners and the holidays, and we go to the cemetery when everybody goes to the cemetery and do all but I mean, that's about the extent of it. I mean, we're Jewish by birth.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that we're not proud of it.
Uh-huh.
It's just that we're not that involved in it.
So would you say it's more culturally a part of who you are?
Yeah, that would be a good way to describe it, because, like I said, it's, we show up at a synagogue. Even my mother-in-law, who grew up probably attending synagogue every week, only goes on the high holidays now. So, life is busy. It's, you make certain choices, and our choice was to just not attend.
Sure. What other things can you tell me about what it's like living in the Dallas area?
Dallas has changed a whole lot over the last 50 years. I mean, I remember when, the Dallas Cowboys used to play at the Cotton Bowl. I remember when it was affordable to go to a football game. I even remember when they built LBJ to the freeway. A lot of people don't understand that basically it was to connect Town East Mall to Valley View Mall. And when they first built it, those were the only two exits. You could get on and you could get off, and that was it until they started, making other exits, which made it a whole lot easier to get across town.
Mm-hmm.
Dallas used to have a basketball team called the Dallas Chaparrals, professional basketball. They played at SMU. They could not sell tickets for the life of them. There used to be a barbecue restaurant here in town that was called Fred's Barbecue. And during basketball season, I don't know about what the owner had in common with the basketball team, but they would give him a bunch of tickets, and if you bought a po' boy sandwich, they gave you a ticket to the game.
Uh-huh.
So me and a bunch of my friends, we would get some money together, and we'd go buy a sandwich, get the ticket, and then we jump on the bus, and they played out at SMU.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we went to go watch professional basketball. But Dallas didn't support them. Apparently the Cowboys were the only thing they could support. And they folded up and they moved. Today, everybody knows the Dallas Chaparrals as the San Antonio Spurs.
Oh, okay. Oh, very interesting.
So, what else?
Okay. Now, have you lived here all your life, or have
Yes.
you've lived
No,
here all
I've
your
lived
life?
here all my life.
Did you go away for college, or did you?
Nope, I went to college locally.
Okay.
Went to junior college, and then I went to UTD.
Okay. Okay.
Stayed at home, had no money.
Uh-huh.
Walked to school, rode a bus, finally bought a car. It broke down every other week. Did not grow up with money.
Mm-hmm.
I learned a long time ago to be self-reliant because nobody was giving me anything.
Uh-huh.
So anything and everything that I have has pretty much been worked for, So.
Is your wife also from the Dallas area?
No, my wife is from, I want to say originally Chicago. Then they moved to California, then they moved back to Chicago, possibly, then they moved back to California. Then they came here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you met in Dallas?
Yeah, we were going to college.
Okay.
We met in college.
Okay.
So, was not looking for a Jewish girl when I met her. Just turned out that way.
It just turned out that way? Okay.
Yeah. And in fact, she's one of only 3 Jewish girls I ever dated. I mean, you know, when you grow up in a non-Jewish neighborhood, you
Sure.
don't tend to date a lot of Jewish people.
Sure. So that's quite a coincidence.
It was.
Were your parents happy about that?
Probably.
Mhm.
They didn't express any, you know, favoritism one way or the other. It was, they
Okay.
were just happy with, they said they were happy with whoever I brought home.
Okay,
So,
okay. And you mentioned you have a brother and a sister?
I have an older brother and a younger sister.
And do they live in Dallas also?
Well, my sister does. My brother's in the process of moving.
Okay,
He's lived here most of his life, you know, come and go for, you know, college and whatnot, but he's moving to Denver, not Denver, some little town in Colorado. I don't know why I said Denver,
okay,
but it's not Denver.
okay,
So, yeah, in fact, he's here closing up his house right now.
okay,
But my sister still lives here.
okay,
She's, as far as I know, she's lived here. I don't think she's moved anywhere. You know, she went to college locally. Well, she went to college in Houston,
okay,
and then came back, and then she went to college in Commerce, where she commuted. So, you know, there's a lot of colleges in this area.
right, right. And have your other family members stayed involved in the Jewish community?
Some of my family is more involved than others. I have cousins who are very heavily into Shereth Israel.
Mhm.
They've been here a long time. I have other cousins that are here that I've never met.
Okay,
My father was telling me one day, a couple of years ago, there was out in Carrollton, there was a bunch of snakes got loose in an apartment complex. And when they finally figured out who owned the snakes,
uh-huh.
my father goes, "Oh, that's your cousin."
Oh, oh no.
I'd never met him.
Uh-huh.
My father was never really big on keeping in touch. I'm not sure he actually understands what a telephone is.
Okay,
You know, he could stand right next to it and it'll ring and he just ignores it. You know, so he never really called any of his family. We have probably, I don't know, 30 relatives buried out off of Dolphin Road. Many of them are from his mother's side of the family, who I've met a couple of them a long time ago.
uh-huh.
But I couldn't tell you today. I'm pretty sure they still own businesses here. At one time, her family owned a laundry. I think it was called Dallas Tailor and Laundry. I'm pretty sure that's what my dad told me.
Okay,
But I mean, other than that, I can't, you know, I don't know them. I mean, I've got other cousins who are in the real estate business and they probably don't want their name mentioned.
uh-huh.
You know, because if you hear it, you'll recognize it. And
Okay,
so we won't talk about them. But yeah, I mean, other than that, not really.
okay. And you said there were about 5 families that were in East Dallas. Do you know of the other families, what ended up happening to those?
One of the families was a friend of my mother's from New York who moved down here and moved into the neighborhood because my mother was there.
Okay,
She since moved to Austin to be with her daughter and passed away down there. As kids, the others moved out within a couple of years after moving in.
okay,
I have no idea what happened to them. Got no idea.
uh-huh. Okay. Is there anything else that you'd like to share or add about your story, your background here in Dallas?
I really don't know what about my background would be that interesting, other than for blackmail purposes. You know, I mean, growing up in East Dallas, I mean, I'm not going to say everybody was a troublemaker, but there were enough of them. And, you know, I'm no angel. Never been arrested.
That's good.
No, I really don't. I really don't know. I mean, you would have to ask me a specific question to elicit something out of me to be able to find out whether I have something up here that would be of interest. I mean, like I said, you know, my dad, who grew up in South Dallas, has seen so much change in this city.
Sure.
You know, he used to tell me that, yeah, as a teenager, he worked in a pawn shop down off of East Grand. And he was telling me the names of the people who owned the pawn shops. And they were all related to each other. And the ones he worked for, they were brothers. And when he told me the name, I thought that was funny because when I was in my early 20s, I was doing retail in the shoe business. And some of their relatives were my clients at the shoe store.
Okay.
My mother used to tell me all the time that every Jew in Dallas knows every other Jew in Dallas. And pretty much I think that's true, at least at that time. Not now, but I mean, I remember when my wife and I were getting married and we rented our first apartment, we went out to Garland and we were in a mattress company buying a bed. And I was talking to the old man that worked there. And as we were walking around talking, and we finally decided on a bed, and so we sat down to do the paperwork, and he was filling out the paperwork, and he's like, okay, what's your name? And when I told him my last name, he goes, huh. He says, you know, when I was in high school, I dated a girl named Epstein. And I said, really? What was her first name? And he hollers across the store to his wife, and she goes, oh yeah, her name was Dale. Well, that was my dad's sister.
Oh.
So, you know, every Jew in Dallas knows every other Jew.
Sure.
So.
Right. And so, your wife, did she move here to go to college?
No, I don't know why they actually moved here. They just ended up coming here. I'm sure it was for business for her dad. They were here, I guess they moved here when she was in 7th grade, maybe 8th. She lived in the typical Jewish neighborhood. You know, she went to Franklin Middle School and she went to Hillcrest High School and, you know, followed that path. Mm-hmm. You know, we saw some of those people at the football games, but, you know, that was as far as it went.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay. Great. Well, what did you said you worked in the shoe business?
Yeah.
Okay. And is that what you continued to do, or?
No, I actually, I left the shoe business and went to work for a tool company selling tools retail. I did that for a while. Then I got hit by a car, got laid up for a while. Mm-hmm. Went into a business called Market Research. I don't know whether y'all are familiar with that. Worked for a company called Mark, which was a large, you know, marketing research company and advertising agency. And worked my way up the ladder for a little while and then left them. Went back and forth through school. Then I went to work for a splinter of the company. They two or three people broke off and started their own company, and I went to work for them after a while.
Mm-hmm.
And off and on, I worked in market research for 20 years, 25 years, working in and running a call center.
Okay.
So, worked for some local people. I'm pretty sure they were Jewish.
Okay.
So, let's see. Then I left that, and I didn't do anything for a while, and then I went back into market research working for some different companies, and then 9/11 hit, and I got laid off, and then I got called back, and then I got laid off, and after that I said, well, you know, it's time to go to work for yourself. And so I started for lack of a better term, we'll call it a handyman company.
Okay.
So home repair, home fix-up, yard maintenance, you know, anything that had to do with fixing the house.
Okay.
So that's what I'm still doing, off and on.
Great.
So,
Great. Well, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it,
yeah.
and for sharing your story.
I hope I helped.
As I mentioned, each story is unique and different, and sharing your background is helpful to putting together what the tapestry of the Jewish community of Dallas is. So thank you very much for your time.
No problem.
Great.